Hello there, racing fans, and welcome back to episode 1 of the Countdown to Cheltenham series, brought to you in association with betting.co.uk. I'm your host, Ginger Joe, and I'm back again with Joe from JM Racing from now all the way through until March for series 2 of the Countdown to Cheltenham Festival series. But before we go any further, of course, Joe, how are you doing? Glad to be back jumping again?
Yeah, definitely. I think we've left it a bit later this season. We're like all these top trainers. We're not campaigning as much this year, but we're hoping to have the quality. I think collectively it was a mixed bag last year, but we did have some very nice winners. I think it would have been a profit overall. So hopefully we can find the next Vauban at a big price, and hopefully I won't have to live on Vauban for the next 12 months.
Absolutely. I mean, we did quite well last year, but I think we've left it a little bit later this year because some of the markets don't necessarily seem like they've quite opened up as early as they have last year. The Supreme, the Bally, and the Albert Bartlett. There's only a handful that you could sort of pick at the moment that are even going to be turning up to the event. So with a lot of the markets still to open, we definitely have left it a little bit more, delayed this year. But not to worry, we're going to get stuck straight in with some real good action. Like Joe said, try and find you some gold. What we're going to do each episode, we're going to pick a category, just talk through some of the runners that have been out, some of the ones that we're waiting to see, and then we'll go through the markets a little bit, tell you what we think and our thoughts currently. And at the end of the show, we're going to bring you one Ante-Post selection each for just the one, Joe. We're not going to hog any of the limelight, one selection each. We don't want to ramp up the book too much. And as I said, the markets haven't necessarily quite opened up just yet, but we did well last year. Like you said, we had a lot of double figure price runners that turned up at the festival, going off a lot shorter. Vauban probably being the highlight for you there, Joe. 12-1, went off a very short price and did the business, of course, in the Triumph. And we were quite unlucky with the likes of Buzz as well. We put him up at 33-1 before he won the Says. Of course, he went to about 7-2, but unfortunately injury struck him that day. But we found some value, we found some winners, and that is going to be the idea of this show. We're going to try and find some double price figure winners and selections rather than trying to point out some 5-1 obvious choices for you. Before we go into the racing, every single episode, we are going to give away 3 £10 free bets. And one of them is going to go to a current subscriber. All you've got to do is drop a comment. And then 2 new subscribers will also get a £10 free bet in next episode. I'll get notification, obviously, when you do subscribe. And I'll pick a couple of names out of a hat. And you might be the lucky winners. So in this episode then, Joe, we'll start by taking a look at some of the novice hurdlers. We'll start at about 2 miles, then we'll sort of go up and trip, and then take a look at the champion hurdle before the Ante-Post selections. And we'll start off with the Supreme. At the time of recording, we've got Facile Vega at 5-4, which just seems crazy. We're not even at Christmas just yet. Jet Powered at 7-1, Marine Nationale at 10s, Irish Point at 14s, Gaelic Warrior at 20-1, and pretty much any price we like for the rest, Joe. And being from Cheltenham, usually throughout the year, I hear talking horses, dark horses, unnamed horses. But there's been nothing this year other than Facile Vega this, Facile Vega that. 5-4 for the Supreme, Joe. 9-2 for the Bally. How do you weigh him up on what we've seen so far?
Yeah, well, I don't think we learned a lot on his hurdles debut, apart from the fact that he retained his ability from bumpers and he can jump a hurdle. He jumped pretty well on the hole. There was one at the third left where he kind of jinked out to the left and was a little bit sloppy, but he was always travelling so easy. Probably travelled a little bit too well in the early parts of the races. But I think when he gets in a race where they go a stronger gallop, if he runs over Christmas time, Willie Mullins will have a few. He'll send something on out in front. If he gets a lead, I expect him to jump a lot better like he did in the bumper. He travelled much better in the bumper when he was following a horse into the race. And I think it's one there where his targets are only going to get tougher from here, but there was nothing that we saw to put him off here. There was a lot of talk about the times between the other maiden hurdle, like Joey Machen, that won it 5 seconds faster. You don't really buy into that at all, or at least I definitely don't. I think he jumped well. He still looked to have all his ability. He looked pretty well in the paddock as well. There's nothing not to like, and even though he's just had the 1 start over hurdles, is definitely the most likely winner of the Supreme, I would say, at this point.
A lot of weight on his shoulders as well, isn't there? Obviously being a son of Cavega. If only he knew that his mum had won 6 mares hurdles. And she won 4 grade 1s as well at 3 miles as well. So she was just multi-talented. Based on what we've seen so far then, Joe, the market is telling us that he's going for the Supreme. Do you think that's the case, or do you think there's a chance of him going to the Bally? Because I know I sort of take a slight different view than what the market's telling us at the moment. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think he probably reminds me of Appreciate It a little bit, just where he travels so strongly and he's hit the line so strong in his bumpers and this start over hurdles that people can say why not step him up in trip? But I think he's got so much natural speed, and he's a real stayer over the 2 miles as well. He travels into it, and you just get a feeling if anything gets upside him into a head-to-head, Facile Vega will hit the line stronger. So I think 2 miles, I don't think there's any reason to step him up in trip until he gets beaten really.
Okay, I've got a bit of a different view, and I totally understand what you're saying. A lot of people have sort of compared him to Appreciate it, but I just think he's a little bit smaller, and I'm going to try and sell it to you now a little bit as well, whilst he's 9-2 in the market. Couple of points to bear in mind as well. Willie always goes on about trying to keep his horses sound throughout the season, especially as smaller types, especially as novice hurdlers. And with the 4 and 5 year old season being detrimental to how they improve and to their long-term future prospects. So I think he's very important. He tries to make sure he campaigns them so they're safe and sound moving forward. They're very fragile when they're young. Obviously, we've lost Fernie Hollow as well this season again. But horses that run in the Supreme don't get let off with any mistakes. You don't get any chances. And if they're fragile, it can take them quite a while to recover. They go so fast. If you hit one of that pace, you don't really get a chance to get back into that race as well. And it can just be a whole different ball game. But the bigger, the scopier types, they can just sort of get away with it. They seem to recover a little bit quicker than some of the quicker the types. And it just becomes a little bit less of a risk, I think, to some of them to run the scopier types in the Ballymore. You take a look at like Dysart Dynamo, and of course, like Appreciate It. Even look at Gordo Jard. He sent Mighty Potter to the Supreme, and he's come out much better as well after still making mistakes. But you then look at the likes of Sir Gerhard, even Faheen, they both went for the Bally. These are the speedy type of horses, slightly fragile. And the fact that the Irish are so much better than us, and a lot of them seem to have that rare combination of speed and stamina. I just think they're good enough to win these races anyway. So sometimes I feel the safer option may be to send Facile Vega to the longer trip, despite being campaigned at 2 miles, looking like a 2-miler, knowing that next year he's going to be safe, he's going to be sound, and then we could potentially look at a mouth-watering clash in the champion hurdle with Constitution Hill. So long term, I do just wonder if the prospect of sending into the Ballymore, because they're only going to be competing against themselves, bar maybe Hermes Allen, Jet Power's going to stay into the Supreme. So I wonder by stepping him up in trip, considering they've got the gears and the stamina anyway, is it not just a safer option to go down that route? And of course, we've got 9-2 the value. The campaign at 2 mile doesn't necessarily point that out, and history has actually backed up that point. Do you think I'm a bit off the mark there?
Some of the things you said made me wish I had a Ballymore slip now, but I think like Willie Mullins, it's always a bit of Willie Mullins bingo, and I think he just wants to get Cheltenham winners. And if you look in the market for the Ballymore, if you do take out Facile Vega, then you've got Grange Clare West and Gaelic Warrior. So sometimes you think some things may seem logical for the horse, but if you look at Willie Mullins as a trainer, he wants festival winners. And I think if Facile Vega, well, look, at this point, I think he'd win either. So your point would stand if he did run in the race. But I just think that Facile Vega might be one of Willie Mullins' few horses for the Supremes. I'm edging on him going that way, but I'm sure we'll change opinions about 20 times in the next couple of months.
Well, I haven't got involved yet at sort of 2-1 for the Supreme. He's now 5-4, so I'm definitely not going to get involved. But I have had a little piece at 9-2 for the Ballymore this afternoon. I just thought coming onto the show, need to have a little bit of a snippet of that as well. Second favourite then, Joe, Jet Powered at 7-1. Hendo and the Donnellys, 350k purchase. This one obviously won in nice style at Newbury. Beat ITAP Blue, probably looks like a chaser in the future, but he did it well. What do you make of that debut? Seemed to leave a lot out on the course, but won in good fashion.
Yeah, it was very Shishkin-esque, probably the silks more than anything, but the way he kind of attacked his hurdles, he was fluent jumping. And I think the one thing that concerned me heading into it was Nicky Henderson wasn't bullish like he was about Shishkin coming back. He thought Shishkin was the real deal. He kind of said Jet Powered is good, but he might need the run. He's not sure if everything's going to be perfect. It's a strong race, which I agree with. I think Dan Skelton's definitely hold their second in high regard, and the third wasn't too bad either as well. So I think the form coming into that looked strong, and the way he pulled clear after the last hurdle was the most impressive thing for me. He jumped well, and heading into the straight, it's a long straight at Newbury, and he got to the front not too soon. He got there from travelling so well, but horses did come upside, and you're just thinking, what is this horse going to find on his first run? Is he going to be a little bit uneasy under pressure? He straight as a barrel, and he just went and kept on going. He's definitely one that has plenty of speed. Reminds me of Shishkin a little bit, the debut he made, and he's definitely one that's, if anyone's going to serve it up to Facile Vega at this point of view, then it's going to be him.
just been a replica every single year. Obviously, Sprinter, Altior, Shishkin, Constitution Hill. Obviously, now see to me he's got quite a lot of Constitution Hill in him as well. Just like you said with Shishkin, he likes to have a little nudge and doesn't necessarily look like he's finding things terribly easy. I know he won easily, but he looks like he's had to just be kept to the task a little bit. But I'm sure when we get to see those gears, maybe at Kempton over Christmas, that 7-1 probably isn't going to last very long anyway. And we're probably going to struggle to find anything coming out of our side of the water anyway that's going to be up there to challenge Facile Vega. But I'm quite excited by him. He's had the wind surgery prior to the run as well, so I feel like they've already been prepped for this one. They're ready to get him going, and I think he's going to be a weapon come March. So I wouldn't put anyone off having a punt on him at 7-1 really at this point. But the Supreme's his race, isn't it, Joe? He's not going for the Ballymore, is he?
Yeah, it's definitely one where he was keen early on as well. So that's another reason why you think a strong gallop over 2 miles, and that would just suit him down to the ground. I don't think you want to be stepping him up in truck just yet.
Okay, so next we got the Royal Bond winner then, Joe. You know what I think of this boy. Marine Nationale, 10-1 for the Supreme, 12-1 for the Bally. Barry Connell trains this weapon, Joe. He's rode Cheltenham Festival winners. He's owned Cheltenham Festival winners. And this year now, he might have actually trained one too with Marine Nationale. He's my first Ante-Post bet of the season. I put up in my own show. I haven't put up any others just yet. But currently, of all of the novice hurdlers, I think he's the one that's most ahead of preparation. That's 2 novice hurdle wins now. And he was so good to win the Royal Bond. I think he was brilliant that day. It was a grade 1, obviously, now on his resume. And even though he won and he travelled well, he was hit with interference throughout the race. He lost a few positions when he was interfered with second time. And even after bunny hopping the last a little bit, he was a bit caught out, but he managed to find again. Visually, he looks absolutely spectacular. I probably can't really stress that enough. If you try to build a horse, Marine Nationale is everything. Scopy, he's probably going to become a better chaser, but even for now, over hurdles, his engine is that big and he's got such good turn of foot that he could probably, in my opinion, take his chances in the Supreme or the Ballymore. What are your feelings on Marine Nationale at the moment? I know it's a bit 50-50. Some people are really taken by it, others not so much. What do you think? I certainly am.
I think you've had an absolute blinder as your first Ante-Post bet heading into Cheltenham. I think he's a very, very good horse, and especially over hurdles, he's just so quick over them. He's kind of epatante, flicks through the top of them, loses no ground at all. Was pretty good on his debut over hurdles. Didn't have to come off the bridle at all early, just kind of cruised upside, heading down to the last, and the jockey just squeezed him on and he went away to win by 3 lengths. And this one was actually the first time he's needed to come off the bridle to actually win a race. He didn't come off the bridle in any bumpers, and he just was kind of, he was heading down to the last and he made a bit of a mistake of it. He travelled so well until that point. Then the jockey had to get after him, but he responded as well, which was really nice to see. And he just kind of got shuffled back in the running as well. I think Paul Townend probably gave the best ride in that race because he was on the outside of Marine Nationale and he just closed the gap turning into the home straight. Marine Nationale was pedalling backwards, but then he just has them gears to kind of cruise into contention without having to be asked for much effort. And I think he won by a short head and neck at the end of the day. I think it could have been a couple of lengths easily with a more efficient ride. Not that the jockey did anything wrong, he just kind of got stuck on the inside. But I know you're sweet on him. He's got so much speed, he's got stamina for days. I mean, you don't know where he's going to run, but I think wherever he would run, then he would have every chance.
See, that's the thing, isn't it? Even Barry Connell said he's going to go straight to the Supreme, but I don't see why that would be a wise option. He's a big scopy type again, so that may suit him. But going there fresh, I think he's going to need another prep run. I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of weeks before the Cheltenham Festival, he gets another quick run into him just to make sure he's at peak fitness. I think he may panic. He's got one good horse in his stable this year. He's not going to want to mess this up. He's going to want to be there fit and well. So I wouldn't be surprised if he does decide to take a bit of a prep run prior to the race just to get him spot on for the day. My instinct tells me that he's still going to step up to the Ballymore. When he owned Martello Tower, he won the Albert Bartlett. He's a similar type. He is big and scopy. He's definitely got more speed than Martello Tower. But again, I don't think you can afford too many mistakes. Despite what happened in the Royal Bond, he still managed to pick up and get the job done. But he just looks big and scopy. And with chasing in mind for the future, I think the route would probably be to go down the Ballymore route, regardless of where I think Facile Vega is going to turn out. You've got to go where you think the horse got the best chance. I think going to the Ballymore might suit him best. He beat Irish Point as well, Joe, that day. Like you said, probably should have been a couple of lengths. He actually had everything go his way, Irish Point as well. Probably has a little bit to find over the 2 mile divisions after that. Would you say the same?
Yeah, I think the best horse definitely won that day, and the ones that got close were probably flattered because, as I said, Marine National could have easily won it by a couple of lengths. I think the ones in behind could pick up a few nice horses, but if we're talking about the big festivals, then I think Marine National is probably the only one to take out of that race.
And what would you do with Champ Kylie then after that race? I'd be stepping him up to the Bartlett after that. I mean, he travels fine. Nothing wrong with the way he travels, but he didn't find anything, did he? And I wouldn't
Yeah,
even think he's got the gears for the Ballymore after that one, because the Royal Bond, you've really got to be staying on well to win that race as it showed. What do you think of Champ
yeah,
Kylie after that?
it's one where I think he made his hurdles debut over 2 mile 5 furlongs,
Yeah.
and then he won and he stepped down into to 2 miles, and he was impressive that day. But I think today's run just showed he probably won a weak course over 2 miles, and then his limitations were exposed. I think his hurdles debut over 2 miles 5, that was good enough. Could he step up to the Bartlett trip? He probably could. I don't think he'd be good enough to win it, but I think he's got the best chance of running well in that race over the furthest trip.
And then there's Gaelic Warrior as well. Obviously won by 86 lengths the other day. Hard to really know what to make of that. But in the betting, so he's 20-1 for the Supreme. You get 14 for the Bally and then 20-1 for the Albert Bartler. And I don't actually know what to make of him. I could honestly see him as a Supreme horse, and I could honestly see him as an Albert Bartler horse. He seems to have a lot of different versatilities. And because of that, though, he may make a better chaser. But for this year, the market's probably pointing towards the Ballymore. Do you think it's a case of, or dependent on where Facile Vega goes? I mean, there's a lot of the Mullins camp that we haven't seen yet still unleashed, but how are we going to determine where Gaelic Warrior goes when he's scopy but speedy and wins a 2 mile event like that over 86 lengths? How are we going to weigh that up?
Yeah, nobody knows, to be perfectly honest. I think it's a bit like this Brazil team that have just been crushed out the World Cup by Croatia. They've got plenty of natural talent, but they just find a way to somehow get beat. I mean, it was probably the same in the Boodles, because everyone knows that he was off 129 and he had a stone in hand, apparently. And he got beaten by Brazil, who hasn't exactly done a load since. And the horses in behind weren't world beaters. What thing we do know is that he's lost his handicap mark completely after winning by 86 lengths. So that's not an option. He's going to have to step up into guided company. And I'm just not sure if he knows enough yet to be winning one of these big horses. I think he is young. We can give him that. He probably will learn his trade in time. But I think at this point, he just seems a little bit mentally immature. And physically, he's probably got a little bit of progressing to do as well. So I just don't think, look, 2.5 miles if I had to pinpoint something, but I'm not exactly dying on the sword with that one.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think he'd find a way to get beat as well. Even though obviously Brazil's a good horse and he beat him at Cheltenham, I still feel like he'd find a way of getting beat as well, coming up against something good as well. So again, if you know he's going to run, say next week, you could be smart and put him up this week knowing he's going to half in price, but it's no good because if he gets there to the day, you've just got to be honest with yourself. And I think he's going to find something too good personally. Without knowing where he goes, probably best just to leave him for the time being and not get too carried away just backing every Willie Mullins horse that's double price figure, I guess. So I know Gaelic may obviously go up as well, but just at the moment then, Joe, the Supreme, who's the likeliest winner at this point?
Facile Vega for me. It's not original, but I think it's going to take something special to beat him that we haven't seen yet.
Sure. Okay, well, moving up to like the Ballymore a bit more. Hermazalen, he cost a bit of a pretty penny this one as well. I think he's going to be a better chaser, and typically I just don't think he's going to do too much between now and Cheltenham. I don't think he's going to find too much at Cheltenham, but I do think that in a couple of years we'll be talking about him again as one of these King George type horses moving forward. Have you been impressed with him so far, Joe? He's not exactly the flashiest sort either, is he?
Yeah, I think there was a lot to like about his performance at Cheltenham. He got to the front, he jumped well, and he jumped like one of them slick 2 milers, and he travelled strongly, and he turned in Harry Cobden, didn't move a muscle. Then he pushed him on, and he did find enough off the bridle to suggest that he did stay the trip. He probably could go further up to the Albert Bartlett as well. I think he's definitely one that wherever he runs against next, it's probably be at Newbury. I'd probably have a bet on him then, but you just find with these Paul Nicholls horses, they're developed nice and early on in the season. But then when it comes to Cheltenham, I can't list too many Paul Nicholls Cheltenham Festival winners in the last couple of years off the top of my head. And he's one where he'll probably go and win Newbury. impressively, and then is he going to be saved for Aintree, a flat track where he can dominate from the front? It's something possible. I probably wouldn't take any bets now on any Paul Nicholls horses to run at Cheltenham, just because he doesn't really live up to that competition, and they'd rather dominate Aintree, which, to be fair to him, he has done in the last couple of years.
Just seems to have much more physically bigger horses now as well. Like we were talking with Fassar, he's got the speed and stamina. You've just got no chance taking on a horse like that unless you've got gears and tactical speed. No chance. But I know you, I think he'll go well at sort of Aintree as well, similar type of horse. But here's another one then, Joe, an overhyped donkey, American Mike, 14-1 for the Bally, 12-1 for the Albert Bartlett. Show nothing, finds nothing. I just don't get excited about him at all. Change my mind if you want to.
Yeah, it's kind of like Morocco at the World Cup. You just don't want to watch it. It doesn't. You don't wake up thinking about how Morocco are going to do in the next game, even after they beat Spain. It's just obviously you can justify why people thought he was going to be a top dog coming into this season. If you get close to Facile Vega in the champion bumper, then there's every reason to think up in trip he would progress into a much better horse jumping a hurdle as well. And he probably wasn't that good on hurdles debut. Just any horse that wins on hurdles debut and has good back form, everyone kind of gets to a little bit happy over, just because I think there is improvement to come. Next time out, he regressed massively. There was probably something wrong, because that was too bad to be true. I just think he doesn't have the gears, he doesn't have the turn of foot, and he's a little bit of a plodder. And where they would go with him, I don't think he'll win a good one this season. I don't think that's putting my neck on the line by saying that. If you can pick up a couple of good twos, his sights definitely have to be lowered, because I just don't think he's a horse going the right way.
He's had the conditions to show a turn of foot as well, and he just hasn't got one, has he? Basically, but I can't honestly agree with you every time with there, Joe. No chance we're going to see him win a Grade 1, especially this season. So at the moment, then, Joe, we're in agreement really out of all of the novice hurdlers. Facile Vega's probably the best of those at the moment. If we go to the Albert Bartlett, Grange Clare West seems to be catching a lot of eyes. Again, one I haven't quite actually got hold of yet or got too excited about, but I don't tend to with these Albert Bartlett horses, whether that be right or wrong. Although I can see at the moment he looks the likeliest winner, doesn't he?
Yeah, he was sent off, I think it was 1-5 or 2-11 for his only bumper debut, which he won quite impressively, which kind of suggested that connections thought he was quite a good horse, and he did prove that. And then he made his debut over 2.5 miles over hurdles, and he won as easy as you like. I mean, I don't think the horses in behind were up to much. I think he got quite an uncontested lead, and no one tried to win the race. They all just tried to finish second. But I think he's one where he does have a little bit of class about him, which in years gone by, you always think you need a plodder to win the Albert Bartlett. I think you need a little bit of like tactical speed and a little bit of class. If you look at the nice guy who won it, he wasn't sure to stay the trip. He won over 2.5 miles earlier in the season. So he does look like a type that probably would stay the Albert Bartlett trip, but he might have a little bit more class, which might help him in the final couple of furlongs.
I mean, say not to get excited about. Obviously, Manila Indo won it, Gold Cup winner. So there is definitely a course to get stuck in for sure. But I think that's the main majority of the novice hurdlers, certainly that we've seen so far then this year, Joe. Is there any that you've got stuck into Ante-Post yet on the novices, or not too much just yet?
Not really. I haven't seen too much. I haven't done much Ante-Post betting, to be totally honest. I'm sitting on a slip of Facile Vega, got 4-1 for the Supreme. That's probably my best of the novice hurdlers. I'll probably kind of wait until the lead up to kind of next year Dublin Racing Festival and kind of them meetings over Christmas. That's probably when you find a few which will be getting involved at Cheltenham.
Hopefully we'll see a few more of the novices run by then as well. But I do still feel it's quite likely that the ones at the head of the market will stay there up until March as well. And anyone who thinks that Facile Vega is potentially a bit too short at the moment, thinks it's a disgrace that the bookies are offering such a short price, you're not going to give any bigger than what he is at the moment based on what we've seen. He's going to turn up to one of these races. Why would they risk it when the markets haven't really opened up? We haven't seen too many other runners yet. And also on a similar point, the Ante-Post betting market is such a bigger bigger market now for punters. I remember going back a few years, you could the prices you get on Ante-Post was crazy, but now, like I said, not even at Christmas, and got Facile Vega at sort of 5-4 favourite without even knowing if he's going to turn up to that race. But don't be too disheartened by the prices. Just wait until the day. We're going to get drifters, and we'll see how it goes from there. Joe, we're going to have a quick look at the champion hurdle now. Not too much to talk about other than obviously what's on everyone else's lips at the moment. Constitution Hill's an absolute weapon, isn't he? And he's 2-5 to get the job done after Honeysuckle was beaten in the Hatton's Grace. Where do you stand with the two camps at the moment?
Yeah, well, anyone who tries and says Constitution Hill wasn't impressive at Newcastle, they just need to find another spot, because that was probably one of the best performances. I mean, I haven't been in the game too long, but I think that was up there as one of the best performances I've seen. He was just absolutely electric, and you just knew he was never under pressure at any point. And if you look at the horses in behind, well, a few of them weren't up to much, but Epperton has won a champion hurdle. She got £7 from Constitution Hill and was firmly put in her place. I think Epperton is better than what she showed, though. That is one thing that I would say, not to take away from Constitution Hill, but she missed the third last. She was scruffy at the second last and wasn't exactly going over the last. If that didn't happen, then Epperton probably would have got within 7 lengths of Constitution Hill, who didn't come off the bridle at all. So it's one of them things where I just really don't see how he's going to get beaten unless he falls. And I don't think he's actually making a mistake at a hurdle in public in all of his starts yet. So that doesn't look likely at all. So it's just one of them horses you just sit back and enjoy watching them.
You've got to just admire it, haven't you? I mean, look, I've been trying to fight the cause for Honeysuckle since we saw obviously Constitution Hill win the Supreme, but it does get hard now after her getting beaten in that Hatton's Grace. Now, I haven't lost any faith in her ability or anything like that, but it's probably about time I just hold my hands up and say Constitution Hill is an absolute weapon, isn't he? I don't see really how he gets beat unless there's a potential of a fall or something like that, which obviously you don't want to see. I want to see the best horses win the best races. But just as a reminder, Joe, she did take down Benny Deju, 2 champion hurdles, 3 Hatton's Grace, 2 Irish champion hurdles, 12 grade 1s, and she's only just been beaten once. And she was actually born on the 28th of April, so she's always a year younger than what the book is going to tell you as well when she's winning these races. But it does look like she's going to have a real hard task on her hands this year, doesn't it? That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean...
Go on, Joe.
Yeah, it's one of them where I don't think she lost anything in defeat, because she's been so impressive for so long, and she's going to retire a legend no matter what happens this season. I think back at 2 miles, she will be a better horse. If you look how well she travelled into that race, if that race was over 2 miles, she would have won. I have no doubt about it. So back at 2 miles, I think a lot of people were quick to write her off. I wouldn't write her off at all. I don't think she's going to beat Constitution Hill, but I think she'll definitely win the Irish champion hurdle and every race where she doesn't face Constitution Hill.
Probably an each way backable price now as well at 8-1 too. Joe, we've just been given a 7-minute warning on our channel now. Okay, so we're going to go straight on to the Ante-Post picks now, the important part where we get to try and brag a little bit throughout the season when we found the value when they're being backed. So I'm going to go first this week, okay? And I think I found one that's got a little bit unnoticed in the Mares Chase, trained by Cole Murphy, who has actually won a champion chase and a champion hurdle, so knows how to get the job done. And I'm pretty sure he's got a smart horse in his care here in the name of Impervious, 14-1 for the Mares Chase. I actually mentioned her a fair bit in last year's series that we did, and I labelled her as a bit classy but babyish, and I think she's come in time now. She won her first 3 hurdle starts really impressively, and was sent off 3-1, second favourite for the Royal Bond last year. She travelled really well. She was going easily, and she was the leader 2 out until she hit the hurdle really, really hard, and that actually seemed to shake her up a little bit. She was suddenly very careful at Cheltenham when she got there, and she was actually given quite a bit of interference on the way round as well, but still managed to just finish 7 lengths back of Love Envoy after giving quite an easy ride. She has now turned into a bit of a beast. She switched to chasing, and she is actually out of a Calanisi mare as well. She's definitely bred to go chasing. It looked a completely different animal when she won at Wexford last time out. Generally really grown into her frame this time as well. Looks a picture and couldn't have actually been any more impressive than what we saw of her that day. Travelled really nicely and travelled immensely well. In fact, couldn't really big it up anymore how well she travelled. Barely touched a twig when she jumped around that way, and I'll struggle to find any mares that are going to find the turn of foot that she has or the capabilities of travelling the way she has throughout this season. with those gears, I don't think Ellie Mae's going to have the chance to do it. Peak Legend, any of those, Mount Ida, she's the one that is absolutely going one direction and one direction only. She'll probably go and win her next and then be fresh for Cheltenham. So the 14-1 is probably going to look pretty big come that time. I'd advise going to watch that race at Wexford. Very eye-catching as well. It was the first time that she jumped a fence in public and looked like an absolute beast. Jumps, travels, the trip's not going to be a problem. And to me, Joe, I really, really like her. I think 14-1, unnoticed at this point, and she is going to be on everyone's lips come a few months' time. Impervious in the Mare's Chase at 14-1 for me.
Yeah, definitely one to like. I might have a little play at 14-1 as well. And what would it be to double it up? A 10-1 winner and a 14-1 in our first episode. Hopefully we can do that. And the horse that will be hopefully within that few 100-1 double will be Thrice Stripe Life, stepping up to 3 miles in the Brown Advisories. It's 10-1 in the market. And I think he took a kind of a reactionary drift in the market after Davy Russell lost his irons on the horse just at the weekend. The horse did nothing wrong and he was jumping well, he was travelling well until that point. And then Davy Russell just kind of lost his irons on landing where Thrice Stripe Life made a bit of a mistake. That was over 2.5 miles. And I just got the feeling Gordon Elliott has Mighty Potter for the 2.5 mile race. I think he's going to want to try double up here in the Novices chase. Thrice Stripe Life second to Cigar Hard in the Ballymore over 2 miles 5 furlongs in heavy conditions at Cheltenham this season. He definitely looks like a chaser. He was good on chase debut over 2.5 miles, but I think he was slightly run off his feet in that as well. He was travelling well enough over 2.5 miles, but I don't think he would have won the way he was travelling when Davy lost his irons in that race just at the weekend. So I think stepping up to 3 miles, everything's going to be a little bit slower. He'll be able to polish off his jumping. He's going to travel well into the race. 10-1 in the market. There's far too many plodders at the top of the market for that race in the Brown Advisories. Thrice Stripe Life definitely has the class. He'll stay all day, jumps well, travels. I think he's going to be winning at 10-1. And I think this could be the next Vauban. It's one where in a couple of months' time, you'll think, how was that 10-1 at some point? Because I think this is definitely going to be the target. And if he turns up at this point, I think he'd be pretty much favourite for the race. He's got everything going about him. Don't be concerned by the fact that he pulled up last time. It wasn't as if he was kind of out the back and pulled up. 3 minutes left of the meeting. That's all I'm going to say. Thrice Stripe Life at 10-1.
Perfect, Joe. Perfect. Well, hopefully there's the 2 first bits of gold for the season. Thrice Stripe Life at 10-1 in the Brown Advisory and Impervious for me in the Mare's Chase at 14-1. I was really surprised to see a performance like that from her first time out. So Joe, thanks for obviously coming back. Really enjoyed that again. Looking forward to getting stuck in as the season goes on. I know a lot of people have sort of think we're echoing a lot of the words that you've heard so far, but as I said, the markets haven't really opened up so much. We're going to have a lot more runners up between now and over Christmas, and there's going to be a lot more to talk about as the weeks go on. Joe, obviously we've got Cheltenham racing tomorrow. Are you sitting back on the sofa watching the racing, providing it's on? We've got a bit of frost coming out at the moment, don't we?
I will definitely, and the heating will be on. The Udi will be on, which is a beautiful, nice jumper. I've got definitely promoting that. That's a very good purchase, and I think he'll be sitting back, relaxing, and watching Epatante win because I put her up on Twitter at 2-1 earlier in the week. I think she's definitely the star on the card. I'm expecting to see her win, and everyone will be saying, "How good is Constitution Hill then?" after she wins tomorrow.
Yeah, I did see you put that up as well. I didn't get a piece, a bit annoyed I missed that now, but hey, we go on and we live to fight another day, Joe. So thanks for joining us, Joe. Thanks for everyone that's been watching. Don't forget, there's 3 £10 bets available, and I'll be revealing the winners in the next episode. All you've got to do is be subscribed, obviously, to have your eligibility for those. Don't forget to tune in to us next time. Thanks for that.